Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole journey of how parents guide kids as they grow up, it's everything, really.
It really is. And it brings up some big questions, doesn't it? Like, how do parents actually shape the paths their children end up taking?
That's a core one. What does that shaping, that guidance even look like day to day?
And maybe the toughest one,
Yeah.
how do you balance keeping them safe, which is priority number one,
Yeah.
right? With, helping them become independent, capable people.
That balance. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the tightrope. So we're going to explore this idea that development isn't just happening to kids. They're guided along certain, let's call them trajectories.
Okay, trajectories. And parents have this maybe often unseen but really powerful role in steering those.
Exactly. We'll look at how that works for things like physical health, keeping kids safe and well.
And also how they learn to navigate the social world, connect with others.
Yes. And then we'll really dig into that tension we mentioned, protect or guide. How much is too much?
All right, let's jump in.
So, it's easy to focus on the big parenting moments, the major decisions.
Yeah, the milestone.
Right. But often it's the subtle ongoing guidance that really adds up. It has this profound effect on how a child turns out, how they function later as an adult.
So it's more than just food and shelter. It's this active shaping process.
Precisely. And parents guide kids onto these pathways, these trajectories, in a couple of key ways.
Okay.
One is just, direct teaching, showing kids how they should act.
Like use your words or share your toys.
Exactly. And also, just as importantly, how not to act.
Yeah.
Warning them about behaviors or even people they should steer clear of, sometimes very explicitly, like warning about negative influences.
Right, like saying, look, that path leads to trouble or don't hang around that crowd.
It's proactive,
Yeah.
not just reacting when something goes wrong. Then there's another layer.
Yeah.
You could call them preventive strategy.
Preventative. How so?
This is where parents actively manage the child's world, their environment, their experiences, to kind of steer them away from bad outcomes before they even happen.
So choosing the neighborhood, maybe. Or the school, who they have play dates with.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's about regulating their circumstances,
Hmm?
protecting them from potentially, risky situations or people, negative peer groups, exposure to things like substance use.
Yeah.
It's like building a buffer.
That makes a lot of sense. And parents are doing this all the time, maybe without even labeling it, guiding a trajectory.
Constantly. And you really see this guidance promoting positive development in specific areas. Like, let's take physical health.
Okay.
From the very beginning, parents were working on health and safety. It starts with obvious things like baby-proofing the house.
Yeah, the outlet covers, the cabinet locks, all that fun stuff.
Right. Changing the physical space, but it's also modeling good habits themselves, eating well, being active.
And giving direct instructions, like hold my hand when we cross the street.
Definitely. Look both ways. Setting rules, praising safe choices, and sometimes, using discipline when safety rules are broken. These structure routines, plan activities, partly to avoid dangers.
And that just keeps evolving as kids get older, right?
Absolutely. Middle childhood, you see parents lecturing more about risks, maybe setting new restrictions, changing house rules as the kid faces different challenges.
Like curfews or rules about where they can bike.
Exactly. And there's actual data on this. Studies show that parents who closely monitor their kids, like they know where they are, who they're with, what they're doing.
Just paying attention.
Right. Those kids tend to have significantly fewer accidents, fewer injuries. That monitoring, that oversight, it directly translates into better physical safety.
Wow. So just knowing what's going on makes a real measurable difference. It's not just about bumps and bruises.
It can prevent serious harm. And this guidance isn't only physical. It's absolutely fundamental for social competence, too.
How does that start?
Incredibly early. Infancy. It starts with the caregiver becoming what we call a secure base.
A secure base.
No.
What does that actually look like for the baby?
It means the parent or main caregiver is consistently warm, loving. They're sensitive to the baby's cues, their little signals.
Like when they cry or reach out.
Yes. And they respond reliably. They meet the baby's needs, help them handle those big, overwhelming baby emotions.
So the baby learns basically, okay, someone's here for me. I can count on them.
Exactly. That consistency builds trust. It builds what we call a secure attachment. And what's really interesting is this security isn't just about feeling cozy.
Well,
It's the launch pad. It allows the infant to feel safe enough to actually go out and explore the world, if you know you have that safe harbor to come back to.
you're more willing to venture out, to poke around, touch things, learn stuff.
Precisely. And that exploration, fueled by the secure base, is critical.
Hmm.
It supports their social development, their cognitive growth, helps them feel capable,
Competent.
builds their confidence.
Yes, and promotes autonomy down the line. It also shapes their internal working models. Okay, that sounds a bit technical. What does it mean for the child?
It's basically the blueprint they build in their head about relationships. Based on those first interactions, they start forming expectations like, are people generally reliable? Are they kind?
Ah, so if their caregiver was responsive and loving,
They tend to expect that from others as they grow. They carry that general expectation into new friendships, new relationships. And the research is pretty clear. Kids with secure attachments generally are more socially competent.
so that early feeling of being safe and connected literally sets the stage for future relationships.
It really does seem to. And of course, beyond infancy, parents keep structuring things to help with social skills.
Like arranging playdates, signing them up for soccer.
Exactly. Actively creating those opportunities for social learning and practice.
Okay, so it's clear parents are playing this really active role, guiding kids towards physical safety and social success, but this takes us right back to that dilemma.
The big one.
Yeah. How much protection is the right amount? When does it become too much?
This is, I think, the question every parent wrestles with daily. You desperately want to keep them safe from harm. But they have to learn to navigate the world themselves. They need to make their own choices, and let's be honest, sometimes they need to make mistakes to learn.
So where is that line? It must shift all the time.
Constantly shifting. We talked about those preventative strategies managing the environment to avoid hazards. That's the protection side.
Right.
But then you look at how parents try to guide and, well, control behavior, and some methods have real downsides. Discipline, for example. Did you know it actually peaks when kids are around 3 to 5 years old?
Oh, I believe it.
Mm.
The infamous threes and fours, they're pushing every boundary then, aren't they? Trying to assert themselves.
It's that drive for autonomy crashing right into parental rules. It can feel like a perfect storm for misbehavior sometimes, and parents respond differently, obviously.
Yeah. And then there's this other concept, psychological control. That sounds less direct.
It is, and it can be more insidious, frankly. It's when parents try to control not just behavior, but the child's inner world, their thoughts, their feelings.
How would a parent even do that? Can you give an example?
Sure. Things like withdrawing love or affection if the child doesn't comply,
Mm.
or making them feel guilty, or telling a child how they should feel, like, you shouldn't be angry about that, or don't be sad.
Wow. So invalidating their actual feelings.
Exactly. It's trying to manipulate their emotional experience, or using shame. While it's a form of trying to guide or control, it can come at a really high cost to the child's self-esteem, their sense of self, their overall well-being. It's more common in some cultures than others, but the potential damage is significant.
Okay, so that's when guidance goes wrong. What about when the protection or guidance just isn't there or fails catastrophically?
The consequences can be devastating. A really stark example is neglect. Just the failure to provide the basics, not just food and shelter, but the social and emotional ingredients kids need to grow.
Like not talking to a baby, not holding them.
Yes. Think about those tragic situations in severely understaffed orphanages, where infants just don't get enough stimulation, enough interaction.
I remember reading about how that can permanently affect brain development.
It can. There's a particularly poignant example mentioned in some research. A toddler left all day with a relative who basically ignored him. Minimal interaction, minimal stimulation.
Oh, no.
And he developed symptoms that looked a lot like autism, purely from that severe lack of engagement. It shows just how vital that interaction is and how damaging his absence can be, especially for a young, developing brain.
And sometimes it's not malicious, right? Sometimes parents just don't know or don't have support.
Exactly. Sometimes parents lack basic child-rearing knowledge, or they might have completely unrealistic expectations of what a child can do at a certain age, which can lead to neglectful situations.
So a failure to provide the needed guidance and care. What about in families where, the basic needs are met, but the guidance is still off?
Well, you sometimes see something called parentification. This can happen even in well-off families,
Yeah.
maybe where parents are extremely busy, workaholics perhaps.
Parentification. What's that?
It's when kids get pushed into taking on adult roles and responsibilities way too early.
Like having to be the primary caregiver for younger siblings, or being like the parent's confidant or emotional support.
Exactly that. The child's own developmental needs, their own trajectory, get sidetracked because they're burdened with adult worries and tasks. The parent may be focused elsewhere, fails to guide the child's actual childhood journey.
That's a different kind of failure in guidance. And sometimes protection itself fails, even with good intentions.
Tragically, yes. We see this in those absolutely heartbreaking cases of children dying after being accidentally left in hot cars.
Oh, those stories are just gut-wrenching. How does that even happen?
Research suggests it's often linked to failures in what's called prospective memory. That's your brain's ability to remember to do something in the future.
Like remembering to stop at the store on the way home.
Sort of. But in this case, remembering the child is in the car. Things like extreme stress, chronic sleep deprivation, the mental load of multitasking, a sudden change in routine. Any of these can cause that memory system to just fail, elapse.
It's terrifying. It shows how vulnerable that protective system can be, how much pressure parents are under.
It really underscores the immense mental load. And speaking of pressures and influences,
Yeah.
a parent's own background really matters here too.
You mean how they were raised?
Yeah, their own childhood experiences. Research indicates that parents who had adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, unfortunately have a higher risk of using harsher discipline themselves.
So the cycle can continue.
It can, but, and this is really important, it doesn't have to. There's also evidence for discontinuity. People can break the cycle. Having a supportive partner, getting therapy, community support, these things can help parents parent differently than they were parented. The past isn't necessarily destiny.
That's hopeful. What else helps parents find that balance between protection and guidance?
Well, a parent's belief in their own ability makes a difference, what researchers call parental self-efficacy. Parents who generally believe they can manage challenges, that they can influence their child positively, they tend to actually be more competent and effective parents.
Confidence matters.
It seems to. And social support is huge. We talked about stress.
Right, stressed parents struggle more.
Exactly. Having good social support, friends, family, community groups helps parents manage that stress. And less stressed parents tend to be more nurturing, more patient, less irritable, less likely to resort to harsh punishment.
It really does take a village, doesn't it?
It certainly helps. And we should also remember culture plays a big role. Different cultures strike that balance between guidance, control, and independence very differently.
Less so.
Well, think about the typical U.S. emphasis on independence and autonomy from a young age versus, say, Japanese culture, which might emphasize interdependence and fitting into the group more, or how French parents might seem less hands-on in some ways, but also quite clear in asserting authority when needed. There's a lot of variation.
So wrapping this up, it's really clear that parents have this incredibly powerful, active role. They're not just bystanders in their child's development. They're actively steering these trajectories.
Definitely. But the how-to guide isn't always obvious, is it? Parents are constantly navigating that really tricky tension. Protect them from harm, shield them, but also equip them to eventually stand on their own 2 feet.
And they use all these different tools, direct teaching, setting up the environment, monitoring. But we've also seen how things can go wrong, whether it's misguided control or neglect, or even just tragic accidents tied to overwhelming stress. The impact is huge.
It really highlights the complexity, the sheer weight of what parenting entails.
So thinking about all this, the huge impact parents have and how challenging that balancing act is. What does it mean for how we as a society support parents? Or maybe for you listening, how does this shape how you view the parenting decisions you see around you, or maybe even make yourself? What are the ripples, the long-term consequences of these different ways we try to protect and guide kids? It leaves you with a lot to think about.